Hi, Eric.
Hello.
Welcome.
Well, thank you.
I've been
Right.
I've been doing some research on fungus, and you are right. It is so hard to kind of bottom out. It just goes on and on.
And
It you just kind of want to hit a place where that's it. That's all you need to know. But it's like goes on and on and on and on. It's
no,
hard to bottom out.
I don't know. Yes, imagine everything anybody has ever learned about plants in the last 3 or 4 millennia. And
Yeah.
it's the same sort of argument, really.
I think what's fascinating, because I didn't really know an awful lot about fungus, is how important they are in every strand of I don't know, ecosystem, ourselves, Earth. It's just they have a vital contribution in all those different areas, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think until fairly recently, fungi didn't exist. They were plants.
Yeah.
They were funny lower plants that popped up occasionally. And then when they started to realize that there was something else going on, these mushroomy things, that's what we're really talking about here, were recognized as just being the fruiting bodies of something that they didn't quite know what was going on, but it was down there. But yes, there are very few organisms that can break down woody plant tissue, for example. There are some bacteria, which is what termites use, and there are fungi, which have basically evolved to break down. I mean, one group of fungi have evolved the mechanism for breaking down woody material. So without fungi, there wouldn't be any recycling in the woodland, for example. They are also all over the place. I mean, we don't realize they're there, and they're in the air everywhere. So beer is fungus. Bread, or rising bread, is fungus. It's thanks to a fungus. Tasty blue cheese is fungus. And then there's a whole load of other drugs that they produce as side effects because they've got such a rich, because of the way their lifestyle works, they don't eat stuff and digest it. They spit chemicals into the environment, dissolve their environment, and absorb the resulting products back through their cell walls. So to do that, they have a really rich set of enzymes that they can exude, put out generally. So think of your stomach acid turned inside out. There are a number of mollusks and things that do that sort of thing. They pour their outsides out and they slurp up the inside. Well, fungi are like that in spades. So there are a whole load of drugs and stuff that we use, but we don't really know what roles they play. The ecosystem services, which I don't know whether that's a popular phrase. It was a popular phrase for a while, and then it sort of dropped out of currency because for whatever reason. But what role they actually play in the environment is not really properly understood. I mean, I'm talking about one or two. There's all the general comment that 90% of plants form a symbiotic relationship with fungi of some sort. Some of those fungi are the big flashy ones that produce these big flashy fruiting bodies. And so they're actually dissolving away whatever's down in the ground, collecting water because their hyphae are so much smaller than a root tip, and passing it on to the plants via some interesting mechanism, via who's mediating this exchange and who's in control. And I'm not sure how well we understand that yet. And apparently they actually look at the genomes of these fungi. That's evolved multiple times in multiple lines of fungi. So it's not something that happened once. It's a mechanism that's evolved in different ways by different fungi at different times. Very different fungal groups. I mean, there are mycorrhizal fungi that are, truffles are a mycorrhizal fungus. the ones that everybody raves about down in south of France and pays silly money for a fruit body. The ceps that you like to eat are a type of fungus. Sorry, not a mycorrhizal fungus that grows in with trees. Everybody's favourite red and white mushroom, the fly agaric, is a mycorrhizal fungus that tends to grow with birch and conifers. And then there are a whole load of other fungi, and then there are the fungi that rot things down that I was talking about earlier. All the rotters that you see growing in you see fruiting above their food source when they feel like it, either as paint on the underside of a log, or small or large troops of umbrellas sticking out of the floor, or pieces of wood or whatever. And they're also perfectly happy to eat animal material as well. Not very much. Luckily for us, they haven't yet really evolved a mechanism for avoiding our body temperatures and immune systems. So most fungi that affect people, healthy people, are on the outside. So you have ringworm, you might have thrush, you have athlete's foot, and a few other odds and ends. But immunocompromised people can get some really nasty diseases from fungi that are a bit like yeasts, but can also be filamentous. And there was a statement that I think was going around a few weeks ago, that fungi kill more people than malaria by a factor of 2 or 3. And I think that's immunocompromised people with AIDS and that sort of thing, or people who've got some problem. But in general, fungi haven't evolved to cope with us yet. We haven't got Cordyceps, the movie where the Last of Us or something, I think it's called, where the zombie humans or whatever, they take over. That doesn't happen to humans. The Cordyceps are perfectly happily ploughing their way through the insect kingdom, or the invertebrate kingdom at the moment. They haven't yet evolved for mammals. And I don't just mean humans, it's mammals. Fungi tend not to attack mammals in general. We do have fungi in our guts. We have yeasts in our guts. Though I'm never sure whether how much of that vast microbiome of ours is fungal, how much of it is bacterial, and how much might be. It's probably not much in the way of plants, because there isn't much in the way of plants to get on with. But it's mostly bacterial, with quite a lot of yeasts and things going on in there as well. But people tend to concentrate on the bacteria, because bacteria are wonderful and they do all sorts of fantastic things, and they do. Fungi, the fungal yeasts are probably something they're a great system for people to explore, because they've got reasonably simple genomes and they'll grow in a test tube. Most fungi don't grow in a petri dish for very long, and their lifestyle. There are a few rotters that do, so they can study them okay. But it's a bit difficult if you need a forest in your laboratory. First, plant your oak tree, come back in 500 years' time when it's mature. So there are some experiments as to how the fungi that grow in association with large plants work, but they're in their very early stages. We didn't know it happened until a few decades ago. So we've gone from we didn't know something happened to now not knowing a huge amount about how it works in detail. There's a surprise.
It's interesting because I found I found doing some research that I always considered fungus to be more like a plant, but it's not, is it? Genetically, it's more like an animal.
That's absolutely right.
And I've heard people say that it does taste like chicken, some of the edible mushrooms that people eat. Like, is it chicken of the forest, chicken of the wood?
Chicken of the woods, when fresh, could sort of pass. I'm not sure when it's cooked that it tastes like chicken. Certainly, when you get a nice fresh bit that hasn't been decorated by dog vinaigrette, a canine vinaigrette, and you eat it raw. Not recommended.
Yeah.
There's a sad story about an author, a mycologist, who produced a book and celebrated by a fungus-themed meal. One of the courses of which was this chicken of the woods. And apparently at the end of the meal, half the guests were in the car park returning their dinner. And he does claim that he collected the fungi. They were not growing on you, because this stuff does. So it wasn't a contaminated, pass through from the ewe. And just some people are sensitive to it. So not all fungi are, well, same way as everything. Some people are sensitive to all sorts of things. But I think quite a lot of people are sensitive to various ingredients of fungi. And that chicken of the woods is particularly renowned for that. But yes, I've had it growing on an old plum tree in the garden, a cherry tree that we chopped down in the garden, and you could pick it when it's just right, because it's in the garden, and it is very nice when it's fresh. And when it's not fresh, it tastes like eating cork. It's not recommended.
You talked about this symbiotic relationship between trees, for example, and fungus. Is that what benefit does the tree get out of that relationship?
All sorts of things. Where the balance of that is a very good question. If you are a tree growing in a nutrient-rich, uniformly damp environment, the chances are the answer is very little. If you're a tree growing in a more natural environment where nutrients, particularly nitrogen and phosphorus, are limited because you can't get your roots to them, and the water supply is variable because it doesn't rain all the time, or you're not next to a nice damp river, the fungi are able to get at water sources that the roots just can't get to. The fungi are able to break down either the rocks. Some fungi can actually dissolve rocks, which is possibly how they came onto the land in the first place. There's a whole new field of fungi that eat rocks, dissolve away rocks in the same way as I described earlier. So they're supplying the tree typically with nitrogen and phosphorus and water, and the tree is providing the fungus with carbon in exactly which form, whether it's sugars or lipids or whatever. So the fungus needs that carbon because it has no way of producing energy and carbon from the sun. It either has to rot down existing material, organic material, or rocks, or it has to form a relationship of some balance of mutuality. Who's in control? Is this a ransomware system? But who's ransoming who is a good question with the plants. And as I said, 90% of plants form some relationship with fungi. But I think all trees do, but they're not all ectomycorrhizal. So these things that produce the big fruiting bodies, there are several ways in which the fungus interacts with the plant roots, which is beyond this podcast, shall we say?
And most of the time, you can't see fungi, can you? They're deep below the ground. They only emerge when they're sporing.
Well, you see the only times you see fungi really are if you rip apart the forest floor. You'll see this sort of cotton woolly threads on there, so that's not visible in general. And as you say, they only show themselves, and they only show themselves when they want to spread their spores, which are seeds essentially, and they poke up these variably formed fruit bodies. Typically in a mushroom, it's an umbrella, but there are many other shapes. And you can go through this vast range of shapes and colors and sizes. You see mold. So if you've got a moldy orange, it's a moldy orange. You can see the fungus. It's green or blue. It's a moldy orange. Brewers see yeast on the top of their vats as they're quietly eating the starches and the sugars in the vats, turning it into alcohol. Woohoo! And you put bits of yeast in your bread when you want to make it rise, etc., etc. But in general, no, you just don't see the fungi and boring things. I mean, they don't have anything. They're not like a lion.
Has anyone ever calculated how vast this network of cotton wool strands are in a forest? Are they all connected to each other?
No. The answer to that question is in the Wood Wide Web type context, where you're talking about mycorrhizal fungi. A question that I would really like somebody to consider, and it's very difficult to imagine how you would do it, is, well, I asked the question, you are standing under an oak tree. At your feet is, let's say, for the sake of argument, a nice specimen is Boletus edulis, a cep, the penny bun, porcini, whatever name you want to give it, Steinpilz, lots of names across the languages because it's a very popular fungus, so it's got common names across all languages. The question is, the beast, the creature, I don't quite know, I'm not the genotype. No, I can't remember. What's there is a name for it. We can't call it an animal. We can't call it a plant. The thing, the individual that is producing that fruiting body, in the same way you've got an apple tree that's produced this apple. How big is it? How far does it extend? Which is the question you're asking. How long has it been there? Is it an annual? It's unlikely if it's producing a big sap, just how big it has to grow. But is it an annual? No. Does it live for a year or two, decades? Has it been there longer than the oak tree has? We don't really know. In terms of the rotters, which is there is some knowledge of, there are clearly rotters, the things that break things down, or that live for periods of weeks or months, because the thing they live in a fixed size. So the Cordyceps, we're back to the zombie ants again, that particular fungus lives inside that insect for how long it takes to live inside that insect, produce its fruit body in these wonderful forms and shed the spores. That fungus is now dead. It's gone. It doesn't move on to another one. Its spores move on. At the other extreme, there are honey fungus. There's a honey fungus that they keep finding various sizes. That is in various bits of the US. Which is the biggest? I've lost track. It used to be in Oregon somewhere, but I think the biggest is now moved somewhere else. But it's several kilometers across. So it's a big fairy ring, really, but it's a big fairy ring that's several kilometers across. That's taken a while to get several kilometers across. Estimates vary from several hundred years to several thousand years. And they're probably everywhere, somewhere in between. But the ectomycorrhizal ones, no, I mean, the only way to do it is probably to dig holes in the ground and do individual genetic analysis of what you find. So it's hard enough, you dig a hole in the ground, you get this tub of mushroom mycelium or whatever out, and you squirt it, you treat it appropriately, you squirt it through the appropriate piece of DNA analysis equipment, and you come up with, well, there are 20,000 different species of fungi in here. That's helpful, most of which we have no idea what they are because they have not been fingerprinted yet. But that's not at the level to say what the individual was. We know that there is a penny bun mycelium in there somewhere, or possibly it was a spore, which came from the fruit body over there. So it's hard, and it's going to need probably a bit further advances in DNA technology before we can even begin to answer that question, if anybody wants to bother to answer it. There's a shortage of people working on it. There's a shortage of students. There's a shortage of money, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So if I was to dig a hole in any given wood or forest, and brought up a whole load of soil. I mean, potentially how many fungi could be in that on a bucket of soil? I mean, it could be none or dozens or hundreds.
I'd be very surprised if there was none. I mean, I think you'd have to work quite hard to find a bucket of soil in a piece of woodland that had no fungi in it. I mean, well done you. but yes, it would be. It's difficult to know because fungi, as I've just been talking about the filamentous stuff, the rotters and the mycorrhizal things. There would probably be hundreds to thousands of species in a bucket in one place of fungi passing through. There'll be spores from all over the place. There would be small fungi, the little rotters, the things that you actually need a hand lens to even see them when they're fruiting, because they're tiny and they're growing in the wood. There are thousands of those as well. Described species, known species. So 10,000.
Really? I think that's one of the challenges, isn't it, with researching fungus? It's just so vast. It requires so much resource just to identify how many fungi would be in a forest. You'd have to dig it all up, I guess, or like you say, take genetic samples.
It's got to be genetic. People ask you to do fungus surveys, and I'll tell you what we can do. We can wander around and see what we can see and see what we can identify of what we see. So what's there?
Yeah.
Did we spot it? So I describe doing surveys is studying fungi hard. They're not there. You can't see them most of the time. So as you started off with. When they do show themselves, they don't show themselves frequently, regularly, or whatever. They decide to produce these fruiting bodies of some description or not. Those fruiting bodies may or may not be above ground. So if they're below ground, you've got another problem. So they produce these fruiting bodies above ground. You can maybe, if you're there in the right time and they're big enough, you might be able to see them. If you're really lucky, you might spot it, you might be able to identify it. And if you can't, at least in principle, you can identify it. In practice, you can't, because there are far too many for any one expert. There are far too much variety for one expert to cope with. So you could then go and try and do genetic fingerprinting on them all, and you might end up with a fraction of them identified and a fraction of them unidentified and a fraction of them misidentified, because that's the nature of the library. But that's just the ones that you've seen. If you go the next day or the following week, those things won't be there. They've probably rotted away, so you'll have missed that opportunity. And there'll be others, and the ones that you saw on the first week, they'll be there, but the ones that were popped up the following week, you will have missed, unless you go on a weekly basis and with a whole team of people to go and scour it.
Have they ever discovered fungus on asteroids or on other planets? Has any fungi ever been?
Perfectly, I don't think they've found any life on another.
like spores or something, kind of. I don't know, like the spores of fungi or anything like that. They've never found anything. It's just
I don't think they've found life. I don't think they've found life outside this planet that wasn't on the spacecraft that went to go and look for it. When that happens, there will be a major announcement. So they're assuming there will be bacteria in various parts of the solar system, but we don't know that. Will there be fungi there? Will fungi have evolved? I don't know. We're very definitely into the how hard is it to evolve life, and we don't know, because we've only got one example, which is this planet, and this planet is absolutely teeming with life of various sorts. How hard is it to evolve complex life is a question that I think the biologists argue with. Some people think it's going to happen all over the place eventually, and some people say it's a really, really unlikely happenstance that this and this happened at the same point at the same time. Otherwise, it would be all bacteria. The evolving bacteria everybody thinks might happen, going beyond bacteria or single-celled organisms might be harder, or it might be simple. Don't know. We're outside my comfort zone at this point. We're talking about ancient history, X billion years ago, and B, it's the biology of how these things work. It's complicated.
Have you ever found, or has fungus ever been found underwater? Does it exist in water?
Well, fungus definitely exists in liquids. I mean, the general throwaway comment is that fungi have got two basic body forms. One is a single cell type body form, like a bacteria. It's not a bacteria at all, but in the sense it's a single cell, like an amoeba or something else, where that single cell lives in a liquid medium. That's a great way to live if you've got a uniform environment in which to live. So yes, there are yeast. Well, yeasts live in water, yeasts live in beer, etc. So it's what brews beer. So yes, very definitely in liquid. The other form is the filaments, this cotton wool type stuff, and that's the way you want to live in non-uniform environments, which also implies I was talking about people getting ill. There were people after COVID, particularly in India, who were getting a fungus growing in their lungs, and that's a fungus, typical, not just yeasts, which most of the other things are, but actually threads growing in their lungs that were not doing them any good at all. Back to, so yes, yeasts grow in liquid. There are a few weird mushrooms that grow underwater. Mushrooms are not really designed to distribute their spores in water, but these do. So yes, there are definitely proper mushroom fruiting birds that grow in water, but there aren't very many of them. And you find spores of various fungi in water. There are people who study them. They've got weird and wonderful spore shapes. They're in foam and things like that in water. So there are very definitely fungi in water.
And how long can a fungi live for? So is it immortal, or is there a life cycle, a few years? Do we know?
It's difficult to know how long a fungus will live for, as we've no idea how long most of them live. But if we go back to this forest with this honey fungus that's X kilometers across, is there any limit to that fungus? Well, clearly, if the forest all disappears, it will run out of things to eat. But if the forest doesn't disappear, and it's a big forest and it will carry on for a long time, will the fungus carry on for a long time? I don't think anybody's... The fungal cells just keep growing and keep extending. They don't appear to have some of them don't appear to have an obvious end of life mechanism, which most animals do. For example, they just carry on growing, and many plants. I mean, if you coppice a tree, it just keeps on living. It's the big tree trunk that falls over and starts to rot and dies. But if you keep coppicing it, it may just carry regenerating. So we don't know, because forever's a long time.
How long do these spores last in the air? I mean, how far can they go? Are they in the air all the time?
They're certainly in the air. I mean, they're all over. Spores don't go as far as... Most spores don't go very far. I mean, you've got a little mushroom somewhere close to the ground that's that far off the ground. The spores fall out of it and they don't go very far. But on a good day, they get wafted into the atmosphere. So you'll find interesting collections. There are spore sampling mechanisms on the roofs of various buildings. I know that I found a I found a fungus somewhere, I can't remember which one it was, that matched a spore that had been found in a trap in Germany. Nobody has a clue what it is. I don't know what it is because that's the reason I was doing the DNA. And the spore, they're just doing the spores. So the spores are traveling around. There are billions of them per cubic, or millions or hundreds of thousands. There are a lot per cubic meter at the wrong time, at the right time of year. There are spores in the air of some fungus or other. How long they live for depends on which they are. Some spores are fairly small and fairly non-protected, so they've got to get on with it. Some spores are black and tough, and they've got a layer of melanin around them. The ink cap, for example, ink cap fungi, which you may have heard of, that produce a black material. Those spores are basically black and solid and will survive. Presumably they'll survive perfectly happily for quite a long time. And they're so tough, they were used as ink because they're black and round and very tough and don't discolor. They've got the chemistry around the spores to protect it from the environment, light, etc. Some spores go through the guts of animals before to help distribute them, a bit like blackberry seeds and blackbirds, and it helps distribute them. So how long a spore will hang around for in a damp environment? It'll start to germinate. So if it's kept dry, how long will it last? They're not very big. Most spores are typically about 1/100 of a millimeter across. That's big for a spore. Some are huge, like a 50th of a millimeter across. Many are much smaller than that.
Final question: do you get male and female? Are they genetically different sexes in terms of fungus, or are they all? Are they all? How does it work?
That's a very good question. How long have you got?
About 3 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. Right. So the answer to the question is, fungi can have hundreds of genders. Mating types is what we term it. And the short and summarized answer is that you are a filament somewhere in the ground, and you come across another filament somewhere in the ground that is of your species. So we've done the species. Was it you? Should you mate with this filament? Because remember, you don't actually know, because you've got these things growing together. So if you've got different mating types, so if you know that filament over there is not the same mating type as this filament over there, they're not the same individual. So they could share their sexual share that they should start to mate and produce and start to produce sexual cross-pollinate, if you like, except they're growing together. So that sort of mechanism, but there's not just two, there are hundreds.
I think that's the one thing I've come to realize with fungus. It's never simple. There's never like one or two. There's always like several options or thousands of options. It's never straightforward.
Why two? If you can have two, why not four? Why not eight? I mean, it's just a very, very mammal thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Eric. I really do appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. It's such a vast topic. Probably even touched the surface. It's just so complex, but fascinating at the same time.
Absolutely. It'll keep me going until I get old. Find your local fungus group, because trying to do this on your own is really hard. Even there's a lot of good stuff on the net now to actually help you along. It's good to go out. People will show you things you will never see.